Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing my take on the prominent questions from PMQs from Keir Starmer and Stephen Flynn, as Starmer decided to bring up the hypocrisy in one of the Tories' favourite causes, or when it suits them anyway, free speech. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So Starmer decided to go with the theme of the behaviour of Tory MPs last week as they appeared to pressure the BBC into suspending Gary Lineker, something which turned out to be stunningly unpopular. It was a decision that backfired very badly. Now, I don't know if Starmer really landed anything with this line of questioning, in all honesty. In a way, it doesn't matter right now, because where Labour need to land their punches this week is on the budget, and next week on Boris Johnson's Partygate testimony, which actually will also be after PMQs in any case. But I found the general line really interesting, and it did have a few threads in there which touched on lines of attack they've used against the Tories very well in the recent past. So even if I'm not convinced it will have necessarily bothered Sunak that much, it was interesting. And it's because it highlights a big difference between Labour and the Conservatives right now. Labour are paying very careful attention to the public, to their voting public, the people they need to appeal to. And they're adapting their general rhetoric to match it, even though there are some people who get irritated by it. The Conservatives are not. What polling consistently made clear throughout last week and across the weekend was that the majority of people did not agree with Gary Lineker's tweet. The Tories should have taken that as a win. However, they also did not agree with the action that the BBC took against him. And when you've got a situation where everyone sort of realises that the reason the BBC took that action was because of pressure from Tory MPs, that is taking Tory MPs from a position where they were winning because the public disagreed with the sentiment behind Lineker's tweet, into the firing line of the public because they did a thing that they wholeheartedly disapproved of. In other words, what I'm saying, what polling showed was a majority of people didn't agree with Lineker, but they believed very strongly that he had the right to air those views, that those views weren't harmful, he wasn't inciting hatred against anyone. They were views that he had a right to air. They just didn't agree with the views. And Labour trod that path over the last week. Starmer even made the point when Sunak tried to defend his party at one point by saying, well, Labour also criticised Lineker's wording of the tweet. He said, yeah, but what Tory MPs don't understand is you can disagree with what someone says, but defend their right to say it. And that should be an important lesson for Sunak if he's in the mood for learning. Being honest, he's running the government now better than either of his immediate predecessors, but he's still throwing red meat around, and not to appeal to voters, because that would be strategically sound. He's doing it to appeal to the swivel-eyed loons in his parliamentary party. And this is a weakness, because it means he'll waste political capital in two ways. First, in pushing agendas which voters don't care about, because you're just going to drown out the stuff that you may be doing that voters do care about. Because all voters will see when you're shouting through a megaphone at this red meat topic, they'll see you focusing on something they don't care about when there are serious problems which they do care about. The second, in standing on a platform which can put them dangerously at odds with key voters. If the next election was, say, just about the red wall, as the last one was, Sunak would not be in such danger on the second point. But as a result of the Conservatives' policies over the past few years, they've created battlegrounds where none previously existed. There are previously safe Conservative seats all over the place, which are now in Labour's sights. Remember, the red wall is important, but people keep behaving as if it's the thing, the key that will unlock the next election. It's not. It's not even the main battleground for the next election. If Labour recapture all of those seats, where are they? No different to when they had them in 2017 or 2015 or even 2010. They're still in opposition. In order to form a government, they need to win 3 times as many seats as the recaptured red wall seats can possibly offer them. But there were also familiar lines of attack in Starmer's questions today, as I say. He opened up by asking, given that Sunak had championed free speech and attacked deplatforming last year, how concerned he was to see Tory MPs trying to cancel a broadcaster. Sunak didn't answer the question, of course, only saying that this matter was, this was an issue that was a matter for the BBC. But Starmer didn't ask about the BBC's behaviour. He asked how concerned Sunak was about the behaviour of his own MPs. This failure to answer allowed Starmer to ask why Sunak wouldn't stand up to his snowflake MPs. The line that Sunak is too weak to stand up to his party has been productive in the past. See, the public generally regard Sunak. They're fine with him. After all, given his predecessors, you wouldn't you? Sunak's popularity is much higher than that of his party. What a lot of Tory MPs fail to understand is that Sunak actually, for them, is an electoral asset. His popularity is falling, of course, due to a few things, one of which is the fact that his party lack the discipline to take advantage of that. Frustrating his efforts to pursue some policies which would actually be popular. The Windsor framework, that was a strong success, all things considered, but it's not an election winner. It's not really even a significant vote winner, as the impact on seats he's fighting for won't clearly see the benefit to them. Starmer also wove in another theme that's a useful line against the Tories: corruption, sleaze. He pointed out that the Tory government put a Tory donor with no broadcasting experience in charge of the BBC. There's no real getting away from how dodgy that looks. Like, if you're going to appoint a crony, at least make sure that you can claim they were taken on for their skills. You put in charge of a broadcasting corporation someone with zero broadcasting experience. That just looks bad. Especially when it then transpires that certain financial links to the government which appointed him were kept secret from the process. All Sunak could do was say it wasn't anything to do with him, it happened before his time. It's like, well, no, it may not have been anything direct to do with Sunak, but it's still his party in government. When people vote in the general election, they're going to vote for the party. Yes, the leader is a big part of that, but it's still the party. That party could get rid of Sunak at any time. We've seen that. They've already gotten rid of 2 leaders inside this parliament alone. So what people are really voting for is the party. They may think they're voting for the leader, but the leader can go. The leader can go at any time. What the Tories desperately need to do is somehow pretend that when they vote in the next election, they're not voting for the Tories, but for Rishi Sunak as somehow being different. Not as mad as it sounds, it worked in 2019. Boris Johnson freely attacked the record of his party in government under Theresa May and David Cameron. Absolutely made no attempt to defend. Said, oh yeah, they were useless, weren't they? But he insisted that he was different. But it's like voting for a different party. Turned out he was just a more extreme version of the same thing. But will the public fall for the same con with Sunak? Starmer was keen not to let Sunak dissociate himself by saying, oh, it was nothing to do with me. He said that Sharp was not an ordinary Tory donor, is he? But had been described as Sunak's mentor. This is referring to the fact that this Richard Sharp was actually Rishi Sunak's boss in their banking days. A personal link between the two, which can be leveraged by Labour if Sharp somehow manages to remain in position as BBC chair. Sunak hid behind his favourite wall of investigation, everything. That's how he defends against everything. Oh, there's an investigation taking place. That's what he said. The appointment's under review. I'm going to wait for the outcome. Okay, sure. If the outcome is that Richard Sharp remains in place, then this personal link between Sunak and Sharp will come back again and again. And Sunak will not be able to claim that the appointment had nothing to do with him because the review will have taken place while he was Prime Minister. And another thought occurred to me. Sunak has attempted to claim that he will govern with integrity. That was his main pitch right from the start, because he recognised that to move on from Johnson, that's what he had to do. That's what turned people off the Conservatives under Johnson, this just total lack of respect for the rules, their own rules. But look how it's turned out so far. He instantly reappoints the Home Secretary who was sacked a week earlier for compromising national security. One cabinet appointment had to be dismissed for bullying. Another one will be following in time. A third had to be removed for dodgy financial dealings. Another Tory appointment to the top of the BBC is now facing a much harsher spotlight than had previously been the case. I mean, they may have been able to keep Richard Sharp in place were it not for the fact Tory MPs are as dumb as hell and shone a really bright spotlight on it last week. Sunak can try and dodge personal responsibility for what he will characterise as the behaviour of others, and that he wasn't aware of issues at the time. But he's only been Prime Minister for 4.5 months and so many scandals. Every few weeks a new one. The only difference between him and Johnson is that at least the scandals tend not to centre squarely on him, but those around him. But the scandals still keep coming. This unending tide of sleaze still keeps washing in, and all of it is Tory sleaze. Doesn't matter that it might not stick to Sunak personally, it's still Tory sleaze. Can Sunak really pretend to swim against this tide of Tory shit and come out clean after the next election? Then Stephen Flynn for the SNP decided to have a cheeky dig at Sunak's little electrical engineering hobby. I am going to say I quite like Flynn's approach. It's a very dry way, very glib way of poking at the government, which gets at the issue, which he has to do. He only has 2 questions, but in a way that isn't nasty or unpleasant. You know, he was referring to Sunak paying to have the local electric grid upgraded so that he could have his new swimming pool heated. He asked if Sunak was swimming when he decided not to cut fuel bills. Obviously, Sunak stuck to his previous line of the government protecting people. Not really sure that's going to wash when the government has actually doubled the cost of electricity for everyone within the space of a year. Flynn pointed to the high average cost of heating bills in Scotland and said the Tories are not freezing energy bills but looking to freeze households. Naturally, Sunak just had a pop at the SNP's record in government on unrelated issues. Although I did think it was brave of Sunak to bring up the issues of trains running on time. I'm not sure I'd have mentioned that one if I were him. After all, it's the trains running in England that will concern Sunak. That's where the seats are he's fighting for. And many services in the north of England are not just late, they get cancelled on a regular basis. Nothing to do with the strikes. As for the issue of energy bills, Sunak is presumably hoping that they'll have come down when he finally calls the election. You could say that if he holds the election when the weather is warm, it might not seem so bad, but that won't really work because direct debits even the cost out throughout the year. In fact, he really needs the cost to come down before this winter. He really needs them to come down before this winter. Otherwise, people will still be paying the price no matter when the election is next year. If Sunak hasn't worked out how to bring those bills down before the next election, and when I say work out, obviously, I mean without applying something like a windfall tax to oil companies, because he's not about that game, then his personal show of excess in having the local infrastructure upgraded to heat his private swimming pool may just turn a few voters' noses up. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.